All right, let's jump into this deep dive. And today we are tackling Canibus,
Oh, wow.
specifically Captain Cold Crush.
Okay.
So if you've ever heard this track, you know Canibus is known for dense rhymes and just lyrical miracle work.
Okay.
But we're going to break it down.
Absolutely.
This track is no exception. And for listeners who want to understand the deeper meaning and wordplay in this track, we're going to break that down for you today.
That's right.
So one thing that's interesting about this track, Captain Cold Crush, is how Canibus uses this lyrical dexterity to explore legacy, artistic integrity, and the power of language. So we're going to jump into a couple of lines.
Okay.
Right off the bat,
Yeah.
one of the lines that I think really stands out is, I'm the all-seeing lyrical with infinite bars of visuals and a sideways 8 peripheral.
Oh, wow.
Like, that is almost like a lyrical puzzle.
That's dense.
So
Yeah.
what is he getting at here?
Well, I think right from the jump, he's establishing himself as like a master wordsmith.
Right.
This idea of all-seeing lyrical
Right,
really suggests this like almost superhuman level of awareness and insight.
right.
Infinite bars of visuals, right? He's creating these vivid images with his words.
Right.
I mean, you could almost argue that he's like, painting pictures with his rhymes.
Yeah, it's like his
Ugh.
lyrics are so vivid that they actually transcend just sound and become something you can see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then there's that sideways 8 peripheral,
Yeah.
which, again, it's not just a clever turn of phrase. I think it speaks to
Wow.
Canibus's unique perspective and his ability to see things from like an unconventional angle.
Yeah, that's really, what makes his rhymes so intricate and complex.
Yeah.
He's not just rhyming for the sake of it, but he's twisting language. He's bending perspectives to create something, really new.
Right, and it's like he's playing with the listener's expectations
Yeah.
and almost forcing them to rethink how words can be used and how meaning can be constructed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Then there's another line that I think is very interesting.
Okay.
And it's, grab your tongue, shout, rip it out, then shove it back in your mouth. Now, 10 tell you to spit it out.
Yeah.
What is going on there?
Yeah.
That's pretty intense imagery.
That's Canibus at his most aggressive, right?
right.
He's using, very visceral imagery to kind of assert his dominance.
Right.
He's silencing his competition.
Right.
It's a very, very bold metaphor for how, his lyrical skills overpower,
Yeah.
dismantle his opponents.
It's like, don't even try to step to me because I'm just going to
Yeah.
rip your tongue out.
Exactly. Exactly. But I think it's not just about, brute force.
Right.
It's about, control and precision.
Right.
The way he constructs the line with the repetition, with the, the actions, the meticulousness of his wordplay, is really on display there.
Yeah, it's like he's dissecting language, taking it apart,
Yeah.
and then reconstructing it in a way that serves his purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And speaking of power, Canibus seems very aware of his place in the hip-hop landscape. He says, been around since 97, I've been ripping it down. It's not necessarily bragging, but it's like
Yeah.
he's making a statement about his longevity and impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's reminding us that he's been a force in hip hop for decades now.
Right.
Consistently delivering these, complex rhymes and really pushing the boundaries of the art form.
Right. And that line also hints at the theme of legacy,
Yes,
which I think we're going to see come up
for sure.
later in the track.
Definitely.
And it's important to remember that Canibus came up in the late 90s during a period, known for lyrical innovation and some intense rap battles.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the golden age of hip-hop.
Right.
It's almost like he's carrying the torch from that era
Yeah.
and keeping the spirit of lyrical complexity alive.
I think that's a key part of understanding
Yeah.
Canibus's mission in this track.
Yeah. And there's a line that I think really gets to the heart of his artistic philosophy.
Okay.
He says, lyricism and wisdom got overshadowed by the singing and blinging. You can almost feel the frustration in his voice when he says that line.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's Canibus, grappling with this tension between artistic integrity
Right.
and commercial success, right? It's a theme that I think has always been present in hip hop.
Right.
But perhaps, even more so in the modern era.
Right.
Right.
He seems to be mourning the loss of something pure
Yeah.
and authentic about hip hop that he feels has been overshadowed by this pursuit of fame and fortune.
It's a critique of the industry, but I think it's also, a broader commentary on how artistic values can sometimes be compromised in the face of these commercial pressures.
Right.
And I think it's a theme that resonates with a lot of artists, not just in hip hop, across genres.
Absolutely. It's the age-old battle between art and commerce.
For sure.
And Canibus is firmly planting his flag on the side of art.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, I'm here to remind you what real hip-hop is all about.
Yes.
Lyrical skill, intricate wordplay,
absolutely,
thought-provoking content.
Yeah, and he's doing it, without pulling any punches.
Right.
He's using his lyrics as a weapon to dismantle what he sees as the superficiality in the industry.
Yeah, it's almost like he's waging a one-man war against mediocrity.
Totally.
Armed with nothing but his microphone and his unparalleled lyrical skills.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I think it's incredibly refreshing to hear an artist who is so unapologetically committed to his craft.
I agree.
Okay, so we've touched on some of the key themes and lyrical techniques that Canibus employs in this track, but there's one element that we haven't even mentioned yet.
Okay.
And it's kind of a big one. The title itself, Captain Cold Crush.
Yeah.
What's the significance of that? Why choose that moniker?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because Captain Cold Crush is more than just a catchy name, right? It's a direct reference to, one of the pioneers of hip-hop, Grandmaster Flash, whose real name is Joseph Sadler, and he was also known as Captain Cold Crush.
Wow. So is this like a passing of the torch moment?
I think that's one way to interpret it.
Okay.
By adopting this moniker, I think Canibus is aligning himself with, one of the founding fathers of hip-hop, acknowledging the lineage and tradition that came before him.
It's like he's saying, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, but I'm also carving out my own path.
Exactly.
Exactly. So to understand the full significance of that connection, I think we have to delve a little deeper into Grandmaster Flash.
Okay.
And what he represented in the early days of hip-hop.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is where I get excited, because I love these moments where, the music intersects with history and culture.
Absolutely.
So, Grandmaster Flash, he wasn't just a DJ. He was an innovator, a pioneer, who revolutionized the way music was created
For sure.
and experienced.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, what made him so groundbreaking?
Yeah, absolutely. Grandmaster Flash was a true innovator. He helped shape the sound and the culture of hip-hop.
Right.
He wasn't just spinning records, he was manipulating them.
Yep.
He was using the turntables as instruments to create these entirely new soundscapes.
Right. He was a master of, scratching and mixing
Exactly.
and creating these, sonic tapestries that were truly groundbreaking.
Exactly. And that's where I think the connection to Canibus becomes, really, really intriguing. Right? Because Canibus is doing something very similar with words. Right. He's taking the raw materials of language, the syllables, the rhymes, the rhythms, and he's manipulating them. He's crafting them into these incredibly complex and layered lyrical structures.
Almost like a verbal turntablist.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Just like, Grandmaster Flash kind of pushed the boundaries of what was possible with turntables. Canibus is pushing the boundaries of what's possible with language.
So the name Captain Cold Crush isn't just a tribute. It's almost like a statement of purpose. A declaration of artistic lineage. He's saying, I'm carrying on the tradition of innovation. And pushing creative limits that Grandmaster Flash embodied.
Precisely. And I think when you consider the context of the track, with Canibus kind of lamenting this decline of lyrical skill in hip-hop, that connection becomes even more powerful, He's positioning himself as a guardian of that legacy, a champion of lyrical complexity in an era that often prioritizes, simpler, more commercial sounds.
He's like, I'm here to remind you what real hip-hop is about, and I'm not going to let the industry water it down.
Exactly. And that sense of defiance, of standing up for his artistic values, is a recurring theme throughout Captain Cold Crush.
We see it in the lines about lyricism being overshadowed by singing and blinging. You see it in his aggressive imagery, his willingness to use visceral language to disrupt complacency and challenge the status quo.
He's not afraid to use his words as weapons, right?
Right.
To provoke,
Yeah.
to confront the listener.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a precision and a craftsmanship
Yeah.
to his delivery.
Right.
That I think elevates it beyond mere shock value.
Yeah, he's saying, like, I'm going to make you uncomfortable, but I'm also going to make you think.
Right.
I'm going to force you to confront the realities of hip-hop.
Yeah.
And the choices that we make as artists and as listeners.
Exactly. He's demanding our attention, not just through the intensity of his delivery, but through, the depth and the complexity of his ideas.
And I think that's what sets Canibus apart from so many other artists.
Absolutely.
Like, he's not just entertaining.
Yeah.
He's engaging us on an intellectual level.
Right.
And he's inviting us to participate in a dialogue about the nature of hip-hop.
Yes.
The power of language. The legacy of those who came before.
I think that's why this track resonates so deeply with listeners who, appreciate lyrical complexity, who value artists who are really willing to push boundaries and challenge conventions.
Absolutely. It's like he's throwing down a gauntlet, like daring other artists to step up their game and reclaim the lyrical artistry that he feels has been lost.
He's setting a high bar, and he's not afraid to call out those who fall short.
Right, which brings us back to the name Captain Cold Crush.
Yeah.
It's not just a tribute, it's a challenge.
Right.
It's him saying, I'm here to carry the torch, but I'm also here to raise the stakes. I'm here to push hip-hop forward, reclaim its lyrical roots, and to inspire a new generation of artists to embrace the complexity and the depth.
And he's doing it with a level of skill and artistry that's, that's undeniable.
Right.
Whether you agree with his message or not, you can't deny the power of his words, the intricacy of his rhyme schemes, the depth of his thought.
He's a true original, a lyrical innovator who's not afraid to speak his mind and challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, even years later, this track remains such a powerful and thought-provoking testament to the enduring power of hip-hop.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that Captain Cold Crush is not just a standalone track, right? It's part of, a larger body of work that reflects Canibus's ongoing exploration of these themes.
So we encourage all of our listeners to dive deeper into Canibus's discography, explore those connections, the recurring themes, and see how his lyrical style has evolved over time.
Absolutely. It's a journey worth taking for anyone who appreciates the art of hip-hop and the power of words.
And for those who want to explore further, there are some great resources available online. Platforms like C Radio on Spotify.
Yes.
And Rippers Unite on YouTube offer, in-depth analysis and commentary on hip-hop, music, culture, including dedicated deep dives into Canibus's work.
Fantastic resources for anyone who wants to go beyond the surface level and really, understand the nuances and the complexities of hip-hop.
And I think that's the beauty of hip-hop is that it rewards close listening.
Absolutely.
Repeated listens.
Yeah. The more you delve into the lyrics, the more you uncover.
Right.
Layers of meaning, hidden references, intricate wordplay.
Like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Exactly.
Yeah. You reveal these new depths and complexities with each listen.
And that's what makes it so rewarding.
Right.
It's not just about catchy hooks or beats. It's about engaging with the artist's mind, their perspective, their artistry.
And that's what we've tried to do today with Captain Cold Crush. We've scratched the surface, explored some of the key themes and lyrical techniques, and hopefully inspired you to dive deeper into Canibus's world.
Yeah.
And discover the richness and complexity of his artistry.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope it encourages our listeners to continue exploring the world of hip-hop with a renewed appreciation for the power of words and the artistry of those who wield them.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep listening, and keep those lyrical minds sharp.
Absolutely. So he wasn't just the DJ, though, right? Like, he was really using the turntables as instruments.
Right.
Creating these new sounds.
Right, and that's where I think the connection with Canibus is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because like you said, he's doing something very similar with words.
Exactly.
He's taking these raw materials of language, syllables, rhymes, rhythms, and manipulating them, crafting these complex lyrical structures.
It's like he's a verbal turntablist.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, just like Grandmaster Flash pushed the boundaries of what was possible with turntables.
Right.
Canibus is really kind of pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
With language.
With language, yeah.
So Captain Cold Crush isn't just this tribute.
Right.
It's almost like this statement of purpose.
It is.
This declaration of lineage.
When you think about it, with Canibus lamenting this decline of lyrical skill,
Right.
you know, it makes the connection that much stronger.
Right.
You know, he's positioning himself as a guardian of this legacy.
Right.
This champion of lyrical complexity.
Yeah, in an era that's focused on, simpler, more commercial sounds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's like he's saying, yo, I'm here to remind you what real hip hop is about.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let it get watered down.
Exactly. Yeah, that sense of defiance.
Agreed.
And standing up for those artistic values.
Right.
It's there throughout the track.
Right. We see that.
Yeah.
We see it in the lines about lyricism being overshadowed by the singing and blinging.
Yes.
We see it in the aggressive imagery. His willingness to use like visceral language.
Yeah.
To kind of disrupt complacency and challenge the status quo.
He's not afraid to use his words as weapons.
Right.
To confront the listener.
Right. But at the same time, there's this precision and craftsmanship.
Absolutely.
To his delivery. That, I think, elevates it beyond just like shock value.
Yes, exactly. It's not just, I'm trying to be, edgy. There's something more there.
Right. He's saying, I'm going to make you uncomfortable, but I'm going to make you think. I'm going to make you confront the realities of hip hop and the choices we make as artists and listeners.
He's demanding our attention, not just through the intensity of his delivery,
right,
but the depth and complexity of his ideas.
And I think that's what sets him apart.
Yes.
From a lot of other artists.
Absolutely.
It's like he's not just entertaining, he's engaging us on an intellectual level.
Yeah.
And he's inviting us to participate in this dialogue about the nature of hip hop.
Yes.
The power of language, the legacy of those who came before.
And that's why I think this track resonates so deeply with listeners who appreciate lyrical complexity.
Yeah, absolutely.
They value the artists who are willing to push these boundaries and challenge these conventions.
Like he's throwing down a gauntlet and being like, hey, step up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Step up your game.
Step up your game.
Yeah.
He's setting a high bar, and he's not afraid to call out those who fall short.
Which brings us back to Captain Cold Crush.
Yeah.
It's not just a tribute, it's a challenge.
It is.
It's him saying, I'm here to carry the torch, but I'm also here to raise the stakes. Yeah. I'm here to push hip-hop forward, reclaim its lyrical roots, and inspire a new generation to embrace the complexity, the depth.
And he's doing it with a level of skill and artistry that is undeniable. Right. Whether you agree with the message or not, you cannot deny the power of the words, the intricacy of those rhyme schemes,
right,
the depth of thought that's on display.
He's a true original.
Absolutely.
This lyrical innovator who's not afraid to speak his mind and challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, even years later, this track remains so powerful and thought-provoking.
Yeah, and it's a testament to the enduring power
of hip-hop. Yeah.
And I think it's also worth noting, that Captain Cold Crush is not a standalone track.
Right.
Right. It's part of this larger body of work that reflects Canibus's ongoing exploration of these themes.
And that's why we encourage all of our listeners to dive deeper into his discography.
Absolutely.
Explore the connections, explore the themes, see how his lyrical style has evolved over time.
Yeah, it's a journey worth taking
Yeah.
for anyone who really appreciates hip-hop.
And for those who want to go deeper, there's some great resources online.
Absolutely.
Platforms like C Radio on Spotify and Rippers Unite on YouTube offer really in-depth analysis and commentary on hip-hop, music culture, and even dedicated deep dives on Canibus.
Fantastic resources for anyone who wants to go beyond the surface level.
Right.
And really understand the nuances and the complexities of hip-hop.
And that's the beauty of hip-hop, is that it rewards close listening.
It does.
Repeated listens.
And the more you delve into those lyrics, the more you uncover, layers of meaning, hidden references.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You reveal new depths with every listen.
Right. And that's what makes it so rewarding.
It does.
Because it's not just about catchy hooks or the beat.
Yeah.
It's about engaging with the artist's mind.
Their perspective, their artistry.
Absolutely. And that's what we've tried to do with Captain Cold Crush, just kind of scratch the surface and explore those themes, the lyrical techniques, and hopefully inspire you to dive a little deeper into his world and discover.
It's been a fascinating journey.
Yes, it has.
And I hope it encourages listeners to continue exploring the world of hip-hop with a renewed appreciation for the power of words and the artistry of those who wield them.
Well said. So we've been unpacking these really dense lyrics and the imagery that Canibus uses, and it's amazing how much he can fit into a single track.
A lot going on.
Yeah. And we talked about how he uses that skill to address themes like artistic integrity, the commercialization of hip-hop, the weight of legacy.
Right.
But, keep coming back to these lines where he gets really vivid with his imagery, almost violent, like when he talks about chainsaws to craniums or ripping jaws off aliens. Like, what's going on there?
It's intense.
It's intense.
Yeah, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Right. I think it's important to remember that Canibus is a product of his environment.
Right.
Like
he came up in an era where aggression and bravado were often part of the landscape.
Like the battle rap scene was huge.
Absolutely. It was lyrical warfare, using words as weapons.
Right. And
Canibus was a master of that style.
Right.
But, I think his use of violent imagery, goes beyond just trying to sound tough.
Right.
I think it's about creating a visceral impact. Right. Grabbing the listener's attention and forcing them to confront the raw power of language.
Like those words aren't just sounds. They have weight. They have force. They can cut just as easily as they...
He's wielding language as a weapon, but also as a tool for transformation.
Right.
He's forcing us to confront the uncomfortable, the visceral, the things we might normally shy away from.
And that kind of ties back into his critique of the music industry.
Right.
Like he's saying, this isn't just entertainment. This is art that demands your attention, that challenges your perceptions.
Yeah, he's rejecting
that makes you feel something.
That sanitized, commercialized version of hip-hop.
Right.
That he felt has become so dominant.
Right.
He's pushing back against that, reclaiming that raw, unfiltered energy that he sees as essential to the genre's roots.
So it's not just shock value. He's using these images to make a point about...
Yes, about the power of language.
The power of language.
The need for authenticity.
And authenticity in art.
In art, yeah.
He's not afraid to make us uncomfortable.
If it means getting his message across.
Get his message across.
And that's part of what makes him such a compelling artist.
Right.
He's not just trying to entertain us.
Right.
He's trying to challenge us. He's trying to make us think. He's trying to make us feel.
And this whole deep dive has made me rethink how I listen to hip-hop and appreciate the level of skill and thought that goes into crafting these complex lyrical structures.
I think that's one of the great things about taking a deep dive into any art form.
Right?
It really opens your eyes.
Things you might not have noticed before.
Yeah, to those things that you might have missed.
And for anyone who wants to continue exploring the world of Canibus and hip-hop lyricism, we highly recommend checking out
C Radio on Spotify, Rippers Unite on YouTube.
Great resources.
Yeah, they offer some fantastic in-depth analysis and commentary that'll help you appreciate the nuances and complexities.
And remember, the beauty of hip-hop,
of this art form,
is that it rewards repeated listens. The more you listen, the more you discover.
Right.
So put on your headphones, crank up the volume, and let those words...
wash over you.
Wash over you. You might be surprised at what you find.
Well said. And that wraps up our deep dive into Captain Cold Crush. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep those lyrical minds sharp.